Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our final session on Budgeting 101. I'm Jay Copeland, and I'll be presenting the session as usual. Today, we've got a bit of a fun session ahead of us. It might take a little bit longer, but we're essentially going to go through tips and tricks to assist you with the things that we've talked about in the previous 4 sessions. So we're going to give you some potential real-life examples or methods that you might want to look into in terms of assisting yourself with managing your money and your financial literacy overall. So let's get into it. So starting today is probably one of the easiest things that you can do to become financially successful in life. Knowing where and how to start can be hard, so we're going to do our best to get you off on the right foot. But the important part is that today you should make a commitment to starting to do something towards working towards better and more effectively managing your money so that you end up in the place that you want to be in the future and sort of financially free to do the things that you want to do with this life. Let's start with food. We all eat. We all like to eat. If you're living in Toronto, it's one of the greatest cities in the world to experience a wide and diverse array of foods and flavors to delight and entertain your senses with. One of the biggest expenses most students have and easiest ways to reduce your spending is to adjust your food spending. So I've seen it. I've worked in student residence for many years. I've been a part of the college scene, the university scene, at a variety of institutions at this point in time. Things like fast food, Uber Eats, and dining out is a regular part of many students' day-to-day expenses. And it is very expensive, especially with the the introduction of things like Uber Eats and Foodora. It's become more easy to access fast food at a higher price point than ever before, as food is delivered to our door from nearly any food provider that we would want. And, this doesn't seem like much at the time. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to order something from McDonald's. It's going to be $10. But then, the delivery fee is another $5 on top of it. And suddenly I'm paying $15 for something I normally would have paid $10 for, which is 1.5 times the amount. But if I had just went to the grocery store and bought, the ingredients that make a Big Mac and fries, I probably could be eating burgers and fries 5 days in a row for the same price that I would have spent on the Uber Eats McDonald's to my door. So, that is a bit of an illustration of one way that you can reduce your food spending. It adds up very quickly over time, and just because you see your peers doing it does not mean it has to be the normal for you. If you want to be the person who's got free money to spend later in life, going on vacations and things like that, and living the life of your dreams, one of the best ways to get to that is to reduce the amount that you're spending eating out and start buying groceries and preparing your food at home for significantly less than you would otherwise. And another thing to consider is that grocery stores vary in price. There is a huge difference between going to like a Sobeys versus going to, a No Frills. If you've got a Costco membership, you can buy bulk and reduce the costs. There's other sort of like bulk food providers. Things like Bulk Barn and things also exist. And then if you're struggling for food accessibility, and this isn't an uncommon thing, is that many people make use of either the local or sort of school food bank to assist with providing for those food needs, because it is known that we live in an expensive time and our tuition fees and the cost of education has increased substantially over the last, even 10, 20 years. So if you're in need, do consider things that are provided through the school, like the local food bank or the school food bank, and things that may be provided there to help you offset those costs if you're struggling. One thing that seems to help, which is kind of, it seems a little bit of a backwards thought, but online grocery ordering can be a good way to save money. One of the benefits of online grocery shopping online grocery shopping in general is that we don't succumb to impulse buying as easily. So I know myself when I'm walking around the grocery store, like there's a lot that goes into how grocery stores are set up and what items are placed at the end of aisles and how they lure you into purchasing them. And there's a lot of science behind how people arrange things to get you to make those impulse purchases. Being online helps you to understand exactly how much you're getting and how much it's costing you before you hit order. So one of the surprises you always get at a grocery store is you find yourself at the checkout and they're ringing things in and you're watching the total go up and up and up, and you're saying to yourself, oh my God, I didn't realize that this was this expensive. Whereas, if you're ordering your groceries online, you can look and you get a total before you get to press order. And a lot of the time, the food delivery charge is roughly equivalent to what it would cost you if you were going to, say, take transit to the grocery store to pick up your groceries anyways. And you do save the value of the time of having to go there physically and spend 2 hours of your day, 3 hours of your day picking up groceries and then transiting back. So keep in mind that your time is valuable as well. And online grocery ordering will give you your expenses beforehand and allow you to alter your order if it's too much, or if you perhaps want more or want to exchange an item for a cheaper one, so that you can lower that overall cost on a regular basis. And then the convenience of it being delivered to your door is available. Okay, so let's take a little bit more of an in-depth look at one popular item that I'm excited to discuss: coffee. You may enjoy it daily. However, it costs the average North American $1,100 per year to drink coffee. And this is because many of us enjoy our Starbucks or our, Tim Hortons, depending. And let's say that the average specialty coffee shop is costing you roughly $2.50 per cup, whereas the average Canadian coffee shop is costing you $1.90. And that's for roughly 20 ounces of coffee. The cost to brew a cup of coffee at home is roughly 25 cents, which means that overall, throughout the year, if you were to replace every, cup of coffee that went into that $1,100 calculation with a cup brewed at home, you could save yourself $1,000. And I know that we spoke in our last session about where savings money can come from. This is that money that you could be saving or investing towards your future. If you make your coffee your own way at home and you're comfortable with that and getting a thermos or a coffee cup of some kind that can keep it warm for a longer period of time, this is a very cost-effective way of making your money work for you, where otherwise it would just sort of be wasted on something that you could have otherwise done easily to improve your own financial situation. So, enough on coffee. I know you coffee lovers out there might, just enjoy the Starbucks feel or wherever you decide to go, but it does cost you in the long run to pay for that experience. So you make your own decisions on it, and we're going to move on to entertainment and leisure. So entertainment and leisure activities represent a large portion of our wants versus being things that we actually need. Entertainment and leisure is important to us. It's super important for your well-being, for our, ability to fit in with social groups and, create relationships that are supportive and, ultimately just wind down after a long day of studying and take our mind off things and let that information absorb. So, there is a benefit to entertainment and leisure. It's not that I'm going to suggest to you that you get rid of it entirely because it's a needless expense, but some of the ways that we choose to entertain ourselves are more expensive than others. So what I would suggest to you is exploring cost-effective options, such as, if you're getting a Spotify plan, can you split the family plan with people versus getting, your own individual plan? Are you making sure that you're taking advantage of your student discounts? Because there's a variety of student discounts available to us, and those can significantly reduce your costs over time. Same thing with a Netflix account. Do you have, one account that's shared between 4 people that you can all use at once versus buying one each? Another thing to consider is you're in post-secondary. You have the option of participating in things like intramural sports leagues and other sort of free activities that you can sign up for with your peers that are great entertainment or leisure activities that you can participate in for a significantly reduced cost. Things like online gaming. Are you playing free games versus are you buying a new $50 game every month kind of thing? Is the amount of money that you're investing in these games worth the time that you're spending to play them? Are you taking advantage of sales that are available? Can you buy this game on sale kind of thing? So online gaming is a huge part of many people's lives at this point, but many of us do spend a ton of money on it, especially if those games contain things like microtransactions, which are, a big deal in the news. But if it's an unnecessary piece to play the game, that's just like a visual kind of thing, like, do you need to be spending that money on it when realistically you can be putting that to better use elsewhere? And then like taking advantage of outdoor activities such as like running, cycling, and group workouts that you can do just for free outside, which get you the benefit of a little bit of extra vitamin D and also some fresh air and just a good place to clear your head and sort of reset in nature. Always something I recommend is taking advantage of any ability or opportunity that you have to participate in sort of like pick up outdoor, activities. One of your friends owns a football. You only have to pay for that football once. You can play some pickup football in the local park if you want with a group of people and have a great time for a significantly lower cost than what it would cost to, say, go out to a pub or some other venue that sells food and drinks. All right, so shopping. Access to purchasing things we want can take away from the money we realistically need. I know that, shopping has become incredibly easy over the last, let's say, decade, where things like online shopping venues have popped up, things like eBay, Etsy, Amazon, and, now with a click of a button, we can have things delivered to us and at our fingertips. But is it realistically the best for us financially? So some ways that we can look at shopping are buying used versus new things. So looking up things on, Kijiji is a bit of an older site. If you're in Toronto area, there's either Pals or Buns, which are like online trading groups that you can just swap items that you currently have for other items that people own and maybe don't want anymore. It's a big deal to be able to purchase things online, but just know that you may find perfectly good things that other people simply aren't making use of for a much cheaper value, like much cheaper than you would have bought them at brand new. There's a huge margin of depreciation attributed to as soon as something is taken off the shelf and what its resale value is. So, look for those deals. Spend the time to see if you can find things for a much reduced cost that have been used by someone else even lightly. That goes for like your textbooks and everything else that might do with your education. If you can get it somewhere else as opposed to buying it brand new, you're going to save a lot in the long run. Another thing to be careful of shopping online is fees and impulse purchasing. Just because it's there and accessible and maybe it's on sale, stores can play with the prices of things. So a sale price may not always be exactly a sale price, even if it's advertised as such. I know, I get ads on Instagram and things where there's people who are advertising that a store is closing and going out of business, and it's been going out of business for maybe a year and a half now. So don't always believe what you read on the advertisements, because that may just be a gimmick to get you to make those impulse purchases by making you feel like you're on a time crunch. So really weigh whether or not you need something versus want it, and if that is the amount of money that you're willing to spend on it. And then beware of purchasing anything that requires multiple payments. Just because something seems like you can get it now and right away and it's the newest thing and you take care of payments later, be aware that a lot of the time whenever we purchase something that requires multiple payments, those payments end up being more than it would have been to just buy the product outright in the long run. And also, by the time you're finished paying for it, maybe the next newer, better product has come out and now you're further away from being able to afford that because you're still making payments on the last thing that are, in excess of what you would have paid for it to just buy it outright. And then buy things to last if you're able. And I'm not going to explain this one too much because I've got a great sort of quote on the next slide about it. So we'll go over that. So this is a little excerpt from the Men at Arms story by Terry Pratchett, and just going to review it. It's about boots. So the reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots that were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where there was where he was in Ankmore Park on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that would still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. This was the Captain Samuel Vine's boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. So, if you caught it, the moral of that story is a lot of the time, if you save or are able to save for the higher quality product, it's going to last you longer than the lower quality product, and you won't have to keep repurchasing things, which ultimately in the long run costs you more than it would to buy the high quality product, as long as you're willing to commit to keeping that and using it for a long period of time. All right, let's take a look at accommodations. So accommodations tend to get locked in for extended periods of time, the examples of which are like either student residence, you pay for like an 8-month period, or if you're renting, it's often at least a year-long lease that you're looking for. So there are associated expenses that you'll want to take into consideration when renting and, generally living accommodations in general. So things like utilities, if you have to pay for your utilities, you want to limit things like your water and electricity usage. You want to be able to limit how much is being used regularly. And that goes for like just shutting off lights and things that you don't see as being a huge drain on those, but ultimately add to like your utility bills. Maybe you have a roommate that takes 45-minute long showers. That's going to cost you in the long run, even though you're not the one doing it. So, consider these things when you're going into rental agreements and whether or not, utilities are something that's wrapped in. And if it's something that you can cut back on if you're paying for it on your own to make better use of it. Internet, a lot of us want like the premium high quality internet, but it costs you for the premium high quality internet and it costs you on a monthly basis. So that's a recurring fee. If you can get away with it, try and search for an internet provider that's going to give you reduced costs with the ability to operate at a rate that, is functional for you, but ultimately is going to allow you to put aside some money towards other things because, maybe it's not the cream of the crop internet, but it still gets the job done. And another one that most of us are sucked into in Canada especially is phone bills. And we're going to talk about that more on the next slide. So cell phones in Canada can easily cost us over $1,000 a year. The average Canadian uses 2 to 5 gigabytes a month, whereas the average Canadian also overestimates their usage needs. So many of us are buying like 10 gigabyte plans, which cost you like, $1,000 a year because you're paying, $90 to $100 a month or more. So 2 to 5 gigabyte plans cost $30 to $50 per month. And, if you're willing to say that, okay, that's the amount that I need, I'm going to use Wi-Fi the rest of the time because I'm on school property. Wi-Fi is generally readily available at post-secondary institutions. You could be saving yourself $400 to $600 a year or more as long as you're willing to commit to having like a plan that offers sort of less data. So if you're smart, you can make use of that and really limit those excessive costs associated with having a higher gigabyte per month allowance, which is funny because we often pay that so we don't experience things like data overages. But now we're just locking ourselves into paying the extra that we would have paid anyways to avoid a potential one-time fee. Whereas if we monitored our usage and set like a usage limit on our phones where there's warnings and things that come up, we can actually manage that ourselves within our devices sort of internally and, just by accessing local free Wi-Fi points. All right. So let's talk about travel. So commuting is a reality for most of us. Whether or not you're taking the subway or a bus, or you're considering purchasing a vehicle, here are some things to consider. Your transit fees are typically going to be your cheapest option, unless you want to buy, a bike and bike in, which people do, and that'll save you a lot of money in the long run. But if you're in the city, that can be a bit intimidating for some of us, so it's not for everyone. But taking transit, such as the TTC or whatever your streetcar bus options are, is typically going to be your cheapest option. Some people consider owning a vehicle, and I am a vehicle owner and always have been. So I can speak from my own experience on this as a way to just be sort of free to do what they want. And, a lot of the times it's a quicker option to get from place to place. But there are a ton of fees that you should consider before purchasing a vehicle. So we're going to get into those. It seems like freedom, but things that you have to consider. If you're buying brand new, as soon as that car leaves the lot, it depreciates in value massively. So, even just like driving it the 20 feet out of the lot when it's in your ownership, suddenly the resale value on that drops significantly, and you've already lost a ton of the money that you've paid for. You're never getting back that dollar value that you spent to buy it brand new or anywhere close to it. Car payments are also a thing. So perhaps you weren't able to buy it outright. If you have a lease, you're going to be paying again. That's one of those long-term things where you're probably going to end up paying more than the value of the car over time, than you would have as if you were to have just bought it outright. Similar concept to what we talked about before. If you're paying car insurance, that's something to add on top of it. Your age is going to be taken into account there. If you're under 25, it's going to be significantly higher than beyond that. Your driving record will also affect that. And the type of vehicle that you own is going to affect your insurance costs, as well as the area that you live in. So Toronto is one of the more expensive places to own a vehicle, and if this is where you are, it's going to come with costs. Additionally, you still have to pay for things like parking, whether that's at your campus or at the destinations that you are traveling to, and gas, which the price fluctuates over time, but depending on the type of vehicle you own, and how economical it is to drive, you're going to have costs associated with owning that. So what I'd like you to take away from this is that cars, while fun, are a huge financial burden that have a variety of fees and costs associated with them, including things like maintenance that I haven't even covered yet. So if you're considering one, I would recommend highly, unless you have places to go that are far out of town and unreasonable to get to with traffic, that you find an alternative method of transportation. Biking is healthy for you, and if you can get a good bike for cheap, probably won't even get stolen. So that's great. If you can bike, do that. Otherwise, transit is probably your best option. Now, we talked a bit about credit and loans earlier, so let's take a quick look at credit and loans before we end this last presentation. Remember that with credit and loans, you'll always be expected to pay back more than what you were lent. Pay attention to those interest rates. I talked about it before, the difference between a credit card versus a student line of credit has a significant interest rate associated with it. So avoid paying those larger fees with your credit card if at all possible. Ask your bank for the lowest interest rate card available. Typically, credit cards are around 20% interest, but you can get some for under 10%, anywhere between 5 and 10% as a low interest rate credit card if you ask about those. Do banks want to tell you about them? Not necessarily, because they make less money off of you overall. But they are available, and they're there for you to take advantage of. So I would strongly recommend avoiding services like payday loans. They can have what is the equivalent to interest rates as high as like 500 to 600% in comparison with like a credit card or a loan or, a student line of credit. So these businesses are designed to make money off of lending you money for short periods of time. So I'd highly recommend being very wary of those and staying away from them if you are considering them. You also may be subject to additional fees in terms of how you're paying those back, and they're just in general harder to pay back because that interest accrues much more quickly over time. So again, you're going to want to pay things back in terms of your credit and loans with your lowest interest option if at all possible. So if you have a credit card with a 20% interest rate on it, and you can pay that off with your student line of credit that's got instead only 3% interest on it, do those methods, because that's going to save you that 17% in the long run. That's going to help you pay that balance off sooner. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our Budgeting 101 5-part series. Thank you for sticking with us. I know that initially we were aiming for shorter sort of sessions, but we got into it here, and I want to say that I appreciate that you've stuck through it and taken the opportunity to potentially become a little bit more financially literate and help manage your spending and money overall in a better way that's going to allow you to be more successful in your future. So once again, I'm Jake Hoagland. It's been a pleasure to be with you here. Here's the quick references for any of the information that was sourced for today's session. And again, a final thank you for sticking with us, and I do wish you well in the future. And, there's always a professional if you have questions that you can talk to. So I do encourage you to go and speak to those people at your financial institution who are going to be able to guide you, or, even if it's just like an independent financial advisor that you can get to help you work through your specific financial situation. All right. Have a good day, and all of the best in the future.